Hello and welcome to Woman Up, the podcast series by Desperate Art Wives. Woman Up is a podcast talking to women artists, creatives, art critics, feminist historians, activists and more. The series was conceived by Desperate Art Wives founder Amy Dignam in collaboration with me, Susan Merrick. Desperate Art Wives is a platform established in 2010 for women artists who are also mothers and carers. Amy's work focuses on domestic disorder, unsteady identity, power and dysfunction. And I'm an artist interested in feminism, language, power and access. In this platform, we share conversations with women that inspire us and our work, whilst producing a long-form content of resources for other people to access. Hello and welcome to Woman Up, the podcast series by Desperate Art Wives. I'm Susan Merrick and today I'm speaking with Emma Frankland. Emma is a live performance and theatre artist. Her work often focuses on honesty, action and a playfully destructive DIY aesthetic. In recent years, her work has been focused on the None of Us Is Yet a Robot project, a series of performance pieces recently published by Oberon Books as None of Us Is Yet a Robot, 5 performances on gender identity and the politics of transition. A 2-time Fringe First Award winner, in 2013, Emma was a featured artist at the British Council Showcase. She's performed internationally and collaborated widely as both a performer and a dramaturg. Emma was described as the punk rock angel of your dreams and nightmares by The Stage on her production Hearty. Hello and welcome, Emma.
Hello, thanks for having me. That's such what an introduction, that quote. I don't know how I'm ever going to live that up.
That's an amazing quote, isn't it? How does it feel to be described as that then?
As a punk rock angel.
Yeah.
It was really funny. I think I'm learning to embrace being labeled as a punk artist. I think for a while I was resistant to it and like, no, I don't feel that necessarily my identity was punk enough to claim punk, like I thought there's legitimately people out there who are punk. And then I was chatting with a friend and they were like detailing some of the elements of my work. And I was like, okay, yeah, it probably is. Probably I am a punk if I think about it. All right. So yeah, I embrace it. I'll take it.
Excellent. So I would like to start the conversation, which I've done the last couple of conversations and I quite like it. So I'm continuing it, whether anyone else likes it or not. I've done a little bit of Instagram stalking and there are 2 things that are really fun that I've seen you doing during the lockdown that we're currently in. One of them is your roller skating and the other one is the performances and the videos that you've been creating with your son. Are you happy to tell us about those things? Because I think they both sound they're both really cool, really fun, and I love them. So yes, please tell me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, the skating, I play roller derby with the Brighton Rockers, and that's been a huge part of my life for the past 4 years, which was a real surprise because I have never been someone who really engaged with sport and like team sport. And as an artist and as a theatre artist, like the idea of actually having to commit to being somewhere 3 days a week and be responsible for a team and show up and everything. Like I don't know. I've always failed at having hobbies because my work is so consuming and also a thing that I love. So it was also taking that space, but actually joining the team has been amazing. And you'd think that having a child would root me to a place, but being in a team has really rooted me to the place where I am. And actually something that's been a real challenge in the last few weeks of and the current situation is that we can't play. I mean, I don't want to. Someone was talking about the Chelsea Flower Show on the radio, and they said, "Oh, the worst thing is that the Flower Show can't go on." I would like to say that the worst thing is that now people are being affected by this pandemic and people's physical health is on the line and things. That is the worst thing. Personally, a thing that is hard is not being able to skate with my teammates. And there's so much kind of positive mental health that comes from it. There's so much validation that I take from skating, with a large group of women, and they're my friends, and it's physical. And so, yeah, the skating is just kind of like, I have to do something. And it really brings me up. And I'm lucky where I live that I can skate easily around. It's quite quiet. I found a cool car park, which has just been resurfaced. So it's also quite nice to skate out there. So that's the skating. I've also just started running, which is kind of less cool, but also feels kind of essential. And yeah, the other thing so I have a child called Joey, and he lives with me for half the time. And so I kind of have him for 4 days, and then I don't have him for 4 days. So I'm in this strange sort of like, either I'm a single parent or I'm living by myself. But yeah, when I have him with me, we've been up to some great things. We've been recreating Calvin and Hobbes comic strips on TikTok.
They look amazing.
That was really fun. And he's just great. He's 7, which is a wonderful age. I feel like it's a good time to be in this sort of situation with him because he's old enough to have his own interests and be able to go off and do his own thing, but he's also young enough that he still just really wants to hang out with me as much as he can. So he loves it. You have children as well?
I do. I have 2. And actually they've been a bit of an inspiration during this time because they just crack on with it.
Yeah. What have you been up to?
Oh, what have we been doing? We made a homemade roller coaster in the back garden. That was our main project for the first few weeks. And then we just got a puppy, so that's going to be the rest of the project for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
So pretty major, yeah, but good. I seeing you do some work with your son. I see a lot of parent artists, including myself, who love to include their children, maybe not necessarily in their own practice, but in making, in doing, in being, in performing. How do you think that positively, because I think it's positively affects your son, just being around a performer, an artist, and getting to be expressive in that way and have those opportunities?
I think it's positive as well. I mean, I guess it depends on whether you think the kind of lifestyle that we have is positive. But I mean, I remember really early on, he was still a kind of baby in arms, and his other parent is a theatre maker as well. And I remember we were making a show together, and so Joey was constantly with us in the rehearsal room. And we gave him to someone, and he was really unfussed by it. And I remember this person saying, well, he's a theatre kid. Of course he's going to be used to being handed around. And I do love the fact that, he's a theatre kid. And as such, he's grown up in the industry. He's grown up with artists all around him. And, a lot of the things that for some people, are, they have to kind of fight to see as being valid, or to fight to kind of see this, to see artistic expression as a thing that is valuable and respectable. I think what's great is that for Joey, this is just it's his life, and he communicates extremely well with adults. His own art brain is really is inspiring as well, and it's just he's also got a really good attitude towards work. I think I feel always confident to take him into a rehearsal situation or a performance situation with me, because he gets it. He's really good at understanding, okay, I'm going to sit here for 5 hours, whatever, and just do my thing because people are working. And yeah, I mean, there's lots of children who have working parents who obviously have a similar attitude to it. But yeah, I love it. I do often feel that he's a collaborator rather than a tag along.
Yeah, I recently spoke to Shirley Cameron, who's a performance artist from the 70s. And she talked loads about, at that time, her and her partner Roland Miller, they had children together, and it was just there was no way they couldn't have their children with them all the time. And she said exactly that. She said that they, became their collaborators, and they were either part of the audience or part of the performance or part of the backstage or whatever was happening. And she said that the kids, as they got older, were just like looking back and like, oh my God, that was just normal for us, but we got to see all these places and do all these things and have all this access.
Yeah, I think it's great. I'm really loving having this time with him out of school, actually. Like, last year we home educated him. So he's in year 3 now. And because he was out of school for his year 1 and that school closed, and then we couldn't get him into the school that we were hoping to, which is just a regular state school that's near where I live, and it's very small. We couldn't get him into it last year, so we had to wait until year 3. So we had this sort of bonus year of having him at home, and so last year he was with me the whole time, or with his mum the whole time, and I've missed it, like autumn term and spring school term. I was a bit like, I don't know how I feel about this anymore. So in a way, it's been lovely having him back, and having him back with the time to give as well, because the reason that we chose to not continue home educating was just the realization that to do it properly, I think you've got to be fully committed to that. And, we both really value our careers as well. And so, that was the decision. So yeah, I feel this is kind of like a treat having him back.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally. Right. I'd like to get on to talking about some of your amazing work, please, Emma. What do I want to start with? Okay. So from what I've seen of researching your work and just following you over the past few years, something that comes out a lot in your work is physicality, and materials, often dirty materials, getting messy, natural materials often as well, whether it's stone or wood or mud, dirt. I'm thinking about the really amazing production recently, We Dig, and how physical that was, the equipment that you used, the whole aesthetic of it was very physical, very labor intensive, but also in Rituals for Change, the materials that you used again for each of the rituals were quite often, even when it was the more gentle ceramics, the craft-based side with the gentle music going on in the background. It was still very natural physical materials, as well as the scaffolding and the wood and the axe. What is it about those materials and that aesthetic that you're really drawn to?
Wow. I can't seem to get away from making a mess. I was reflecting recently that when I was making Rituals for Change, I was really determined that it was going to be a clean show, like with no mess. And that absolutely ended up being probably the most extremely messy show that I've made. And I do kind of feel that like that in a way after that show, because I did so clearly at the beginning have this thought of like, right, I don't want to do that again. I want to do something fresh. And then I ended up sort of doing that, that coming through for some reason. And then actually post Rituals for Change, I have I more embrace that now. And I think, okay, well, it's going to be messy. So what? Like, how can I make a better mess? How can I make a bigger mess? How can I understand the mess more? And so I think that kind of helped me to understand that, it is a core part of what I'm interested in. I think in that body of work, None of This Is Yet a Robot, which was all pieces that are reflecting on my transition. I'm a trans woman, and that they were made over the first 7 years of my transition. And I think there's something that I wanted to bring into the work about materiality and about physicality and about the fact that my body has been going through so many changes that for me, the experience of being trans, of being a transsexual woman is is a very physical one, even though for a very long time it's been coded as a mental thing. I had to, as part of the journey of accessing the, what I personally wanted to access medically, I've had to go through a long period of psychiatric assessment and be, assessed as having mental illness and things like this, which I strongly disagree with, because it's always felt to me of the body, absolutely. And so there's something in the work that I want to use. I do want, and I did want to use my body, and particularly Rituals for Change, which was very much intended to be a celebration of the kind of the drugs that are able to affect my body in this way, of all of our bodies that have this potentiality to change. The fact that we are all changing, whether that's a change from that's a kind of change of our gender markers, or whether that's a change because we're aging, or it's a change because of pregnancy, or a change because of illness, or there's so many reasons. We're always changing, and so there was something about coming back to the body that I think is really important. And then I think that continues. I think that's what brings me to objects and brings me to mass. We Dig was extreme. I mean, that was a group show that I made with a lot of other people, but performed with 4 other trans feminine people. And it was all centered around digging a hole. I just knew I really wanted to break up rocks and use a pneumatic drill really early on. I was like, this, I think that has to be there. And that,
I think you need to describe that, because when I first saw that, I was like, so actually digging going to happen in the theatre? And it was so exciting to see you actually dug a hole. That was amazing.
So the production was commissioned by Oval House as part of their final season in their the location where they'd been for 50 years, in Oval House Theatre in Oval in London. And it was a commission to create a performance that would literally demolish the theatre, because they are moving away from that building. So they had the opportunity to destroy a theatre. And I was like, this is the commission I've been waiting for my work. And it coincided with, I've had this kind of fascination with the idea of digging and burying, for a while now. I was in Brazil and speaking with a trans person there who was talking about, in their words, the genocide that's happening in that country against trans people. And they said to me, we have to bury our knowledge until the apocalypse passes, in the hope that in the future it can be uncovered by our people. And I think I've been really fascinated by this idea of, well, what is the apocalypse? And, what knowledge should we be burying for people to uncover? What wisdom is there that's out there that we need to dig up? And so the opportunity to actually dig a literal hole of the kind of scale that I've been imagining, Rituals for Change has earth in it, but it's a small pile of earth that we bring into a theatre space. Whereas, here we were able to literally break the ground. And I guess, again, that was the calling for the pneumatic drill, was to show that, okay, we really are going to break through this concrete, and we're going to dig, and we're going to get sweaty, and you're going to see these feminine bodies, these trans feminine bodies, in a way that you're not usually presented, with female bodies being physical and, sweating and working hard. And I think, that's something that I do embrace in my work. And for me, the digging as well came.
I love that about your work. Absolutely love that about your work.
I think the other, I feel like I'm going to go on, but the final thing I would say about both those pieces, Rituals and We Dig, for me, that with We Dig, there were so many different voices, and everyone's background and experience was very different. We had a person came from Indonesia and was part of the core company. There were artists from Turtle Island, from Canada, who came over, other artists from the UK. So everyone had a very different and unique perspective that they brought to the piece. And so I really asked myself, well, what's my, other than this anecdote that I heard, what is my relationship to holes? And I'm from Cornwall. and the mining industry is a really big feature of Cornish landscape and my growing up. And so there was something about, and also as a white person, in some of the conversations that we were having, being wanted to be representative in a way of destructive colonialism that's scarred the land that we live on, as well as causing kind of great difficulties in the modern world. So for me, there was something about stepping into the role of the miner, and to dig in a quite an invasive and destructive way, fun though it was. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally makes sense.
Because that was present in rituals because of the clay as well, the China clay, which is mined from Cornwall.
Yeah. Amazing. So the project None of Us Is Yet a Robot, which is now a book, as we mentioned in the intro, that's based around these 5 performances that you've created over the last few years. Did you begin it as a project, or is it something that you began as these separate performances perhaps, and it's turned into that project? What was the process of this?
I mean, it absolutely just started out as a show. It was going to be a show. And I think it became a project at some point retrospectively, when there were possibly around the point when there were 3 things. It was also kind of, I mean, when I started making language, it was absolutely at a point of, Rituals for Change talks a lot more eloquently than I can here and in real life about the fact that of when does a transition begin? We're always transitioning, etc. And I do find it hard and reductive and problematic to put dates and things and say, well, there was this before and there was this after, because I don't think it is as simple as that. But certainly around 2012 was a big time of change for me in terms of my relationship to my body, the language I was using around being trans, coming out, changing my gender, my pronouns, my name, things like this. So there was an awful lot of things going on. And all I know is that I'm an artist and a theatre maker, and the way that I feel that I'm contributing, or what I'm doing with my work, is to reflect on the things that are happening as they are happening. So that was the catalyst for beginning, really, was just going, okay, well, there's this stuff happening, and I make theatre, so I'm going to make theatre about it. And I think what was really amazing in those first few years was that I had people around me, and also I'm awareness myself of when that work was for an audience and when it was not, and when it was part of just me working out my shit. And we didn't perform anything. I didn't perform anything for the first few years of working on that material. And really everything in that project, each of the pieces, has heat in it. It's hot, the subject matter.
Yeah. So there are 5, for the listeners, there are 5 parts, aren't there, to None of Us Is Yet a Robot? Language, Egg Box, Doodle, Rituals for Change, and Hearty, which are all performances in their own right.
Yeah, that's right. And so they were the 5 performance elements of the project, and each of them in their own way, around the time that I was making them, were dealing with where I was at that time, and where the politics around trans issues was at that time as well, which also changed wildly across the time of making them. But I was never in crisis with the material, and I think that's been a really important lesson to learn. I've never been taking material to the stage that felt unsafe. I think that's really important. But yeah, becoming a project. I mean, also, I took the title None of Us Is Yet a Robot, which responds to, it was a response to there's a slur that's often thrown against trans women, particularly, that some women are biological and some women are by definition then non-biological. And so this was it's part of the text of language that we are all biological, none of us is yet a robot, and then that became the title. But also having a title was essential at that time because I hadn't yet changed my name, and the first performance of Language got some really bad representation in the press. And it was a kind of introduction to realize, like, oh, not everyone's going to receive this work kindly. Not everyone is going to have, a positive thoughts around trans people. And at that point, I hadn't come out personally to all the people I wanted to come out personally to. So it felt kind of essential to put a name between me and the work as a kind of protection, really. It was like, if I didn't want, it was scary.
I bet it was. Do you know that really makes sense?
Kind of came from.
Did Eggbox come next after Language?
It's so slidey, the time of things. Eggbox and Doodle came around the same time.
You're talking about safety, and when I looked at the work of Eggbox, it immediately reminded me of something I did last year when I was thinking about my own safety and personal bubbles of safety, and you literally sat in a cardboard box, didn't you?
Yeah.
With someone else in another box, and you had walkie-talkies, and that idea of that protective space and that need for all that. I don't think a lot of your work, although it seems to come from a biographical chronology potentially, but it doesn't seem to be totally biographical. You don't sit there and you're not giving memoirs. It's kind of reflecting on situations that can happen to so many people. And I could see that in when you're sat in that space, really reflecting on this need for protection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I really liked that. I follow you on Instagram as well. I really liked your work, that project last year, and it feels so relevant now, doesn't it? That whole body of work. It's so strange when you sort of make something and then it comes to life.
We need our boxes and our bubbles. Yeah.
So strange. I've been thinking about Eggbox as well, and thinking like, maybe there's a life for it in this strange kind of lockdown situation because of the one-on-oneness of it. And I keep going back to it, but I'm just a bit, I'm not sure if I'm I'm not sure if I'm still in the same place as I was when I made it.
It's sometimes, I think sometimes the situation might call for it, but if it's not there personally, it doesn't feel right, does it?
Yeah, I kind of feel like it's, of all the pieces, I feel like it's the most naive in a way, or it's the most generous to the audience in a way that I don't necessarily feel anymore. Don't quite feel as generous these days because of politically where things are for trans people and for myself. So I think that's the thing that always kind of sticks a bit. I'm like, oh, it's really nice. But you've got some learning to do. It's about growing. It's about growing. There's the end of that piece is this quote, and all of it came from this book that I found, which was called Sex and the Nature of Things, which was written by a marine biologist about like biology and the development of life. And it had these beautiful chapter headings that I stole from. But the end of the show, I think I quote in it is that growing from an egg is a hazardous process. And most of us are luckier than we realize. And I think, God, it is hazardous growing, coming out is hazardous.
Yeah. I think maybe it's just not messy enough yet. If you wanted to bring it back to get messy.
That's it.
Ripped apart with an axe, and I don't know.
It was pretty. It was pretty sweaty inside the boxes.
Oh, I bet.
The boxes were great because they were like adult human size. I had them specially made by a cardboard box place because I was like, I want to sit inside a box in the way that you sit inside a box when you're a child, and I didn't want it to feel uncomfortable, and I have access considerations and things. So the boxes, they're really huge, but they're so satisfying. And I think that was, the main experience for people was that everyone who came and watched it. And it was just one-on-one, and it was 20 minutes, and I did one and I did another and another.
Yeah.
And it was a very nice thing to sit inside the box. So I think that was what people mostly got from it.
Okay. I think I want one though.
Yeah.
I want one. Right, what did I want to ask you next? I'm looking at my notes. Okay, you talked in there briefly about you make sure in your work, or maybe you don't make sure, but within your work, you've never felt that you've been in crisis. It's always a safe space. And I see that in some of the other work that you do, the holding space type work that you do, like the Gender Roadshow. Do you feel that that's something that you do for audiences as well as for the performers, or is it something about those who are performing, about those you are going out and meeting when you're doing the roadshow? Is it a safe space for everybody that you're providing, do you think?
A great question. I'm sure it's not possible to provide a safe space for everybody. And every time I'm lucky enough to facilitate a space or to hold space for people, I'm continually learning about new things that I need to take into consideration, and kind of striving to be better at it. I don't think that having a space that is safe necessarily means having a space that is risk-free, or having a space that is only comfortable, those things. But I do think that it's important to not have people in crisis, though. And I think that there's a lot about theatre industry, performance industry that breeds quite unsafe practices. And I think I'm just kind of increasingly aware of the fact that we don't need to work like that. And it's really hard. Like, I've been working the last couple of years, been lucky enough to go on a couple of occasions over to Turtle Island, and to participate in space over there, and to last year hold space over there with groups of performers who are made up of settler people and indigenous artists as well. Settler artists and indigenous artists. And I think that there's a lot that I've might have to cut this, pause out. Hang on, I sort of lost my way a second.
So you went out to Turtle Island.
What was I going to say? Sorry, I derailed myself. But I derailed myself because I was trying to get the language right. And this is the thing of how
I have to cut this bit too, because I'm going to admit that I just had to Google Turtle Island. I'm like, oh no, I didn't know where that is. But yeah, it's Fiji.
No.
Oh, is it not?
No. Okay. Let's back up. And then maybe there's some unpacking to do here about stuff.
And I'll question. Yeah.
Just let me think. Okay. Sorry, can I just think for 2 seconds, because I just wanted to remember what I was going to say, because there was a reason I was talking about. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Should we go back? Can we go back?
Well, why don't I reckon I can. Yeah, you go back. Start where you want to start. And shall I ask about Turtle Island, or are you just going to say, so I don't sound so silly? I don't mind if I do.
I can just say, if you like, so you don't have to ask. Okay. That's a great question. I think that I don't feel that. I'm sure it's not possible to hold a space that would be safe for everybody. And I don't think that a safe space necessarily needs to be a space without conflict, or a space that's comfortable to sit in, or a space that doesn't take risks. But I do think there's a lot about, I think there's a lot about our industry and the way in which, I think there's just a kind of culture of the more that we bear ourselves, and the more that we put out, riskier it is, or the worse it is, the worse situation I can talk about, the better the work, the better the art is going to be. And I think that's a kind of dangerous trend that sometimes we can fall into. But I've learned an awful lot about facilitating space over the last few years, and I'm continuing to learn. And WeDig was a big learning point for me as well. And I think the last couple of years I've been lucky enough to visit Turtle Island a couple of times. Turtle Island being the indigenous name for Canada, for North America. I was in Canada, and I worked over there with indigenous artists. And one of the artists I've worked with, Cole Alvis, who's Métis, and Cole's been working a lot on attempting to decolonize their practice, attempting to to look at things in a different way, because I think a lot of the unsafe and unhealthy practices that we have, particularly in theatre, which I can speak to, they're not natural ways of working when we come down to it. And it's, even down to things like, the Globe Theatre I learnt recently don't do their technical rehearsals in the evening anymore. They've just stopped it because people have childcare, and also that leads to stressful situations. And part of me goes, oh my God, what is a technical rehearsal if it's not happening at 4 a.m.? Well, the answer is it's more healthy and more productive. And so through Cole and conversation with Cole, I've been, I'm really inspired to question really when I am facilitating a room, to question, okay, how is this room set up? Are we just working in this way because it's how we've always been taught to work through previous examples, or are we working in a way that's going to best support the people who are in this room? And as a white person, trying to always be aware of how much space I'm taking up and how I'm holding space for others or getting in the way of others. And like I say, I am really, the thing about beginning to question this in myself is to also realize that I have a lot of bad practice in the things that I do too. So that's a real journey that I've been on.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you obviously hold safe spaces because you think about it so much. In that question, I love what I could see on your website about how you hold spaces, and that you do make sure that when you're holding workshop type spaces, or when you are, producing something with a lot of people who, that you really care. And I think that really comes across in the work as well as in what you can see of the preparation. And it's really important. It's important to me as well in my projects. I make sure that I I'm questioning it as well now. I attempt to make sure that I ask people what they need, and then I try to facilitate around that and make sure that working hours fit and are flexible, and that there's respect there, and that you challenge and you take risks, but it's in a way that is not going to cause harm.
I think, I got really excited when you were just talking then, because I think I remembered that, of course, a lot of it is this, it's about the attempt, right? And actually, as much as I love talking about failure, about how failure is really important in making work, and of course it is, of course it is. I also don't really like to fail. I like it when things go well, and I like it when things succeed, and when people, love work and stuff, is well, and I get nice reviews that say I'm a punk angel. But actually, some of these questions have led things to have led to crunchy situations, and have led to things being difficult. And part of the conversation I've been having with Cole in Turtle Island is about recognizing that in order to truly decolonize our practice, or to move towards decolonization, which is more achievable, I think, we have to also kind of release the idea of what success looks like. And, the idea of success only really ever meaning, success is really associated with excellence in our culture. And it's quite frightening to go, okay, actually the success of this project might not look like an excellent production. It might look like something else. but I'm quite excited to be holding myself to that, as I'm making new work and making work that collaborates with other people, which is what I'm focusing on at the moment.
I think that is an amazing place to finish, Emma. Just the idea of releasing the idea of what success looks like. I'm going to hold on to that. Thank you so much for your time. It's been amazing.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely.
You're absolutely welcome.
I hope the rest of your lockdown is as safe and healthy as the first bit has been. For however long we're in this situation.
Thank you. I'm going to do my finishy. This was me. I'll have to remember my words before I do. And then we can have like a 5-minute chat if that's all right while we upload this now. Cool. Okay. Thank you for listening. This was Woman Up, the podcast series by Desperate Art Wives.